To the Point with your host, News Channel 5's Kelly Gunn.
But the man who...
report says Palm Beach County is seeing what's being called the early symptoms of crippling diseases undermining the economy and must make major investments and changes to prosper. It says it also needs to improve the education system or face a talent gap in what businesses want when it comes to hiring. Those are just some of the challenges the county is facing, and that's according to the business community. It also has drafted what it calls 6 pillars for improving the economy in the county. They are education, economic development, infrastructure, the business climate, government, and the quality of life. And our guest today on To the Point is Michael Jones, the president of the Palm Beach County Economic Council, which came up with the 6-pillar plan. And he'll be answering questions from us this morning. Joining me is my co-host, Michael Williams.
Always a pleasure.
Yep, and thank you very much, Mr. Jones. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Let's get to the point. What shape is the county's economy in right now? And compare it to a house. Is it cracking? Is it crumbling? Is there a problem with the foundation? What's going on?
I think Palm Beach County has a solid foundation. We have all the attributes for a desirable place to live and work. I would say that we do need some improvements. We need to maybe change some things. Maybe we need to expand our foundation to diversify the economy.
How do we make sure, though, that this report, we're holding it right here, doesn't become something that gathers dust, as so many do? I mean, what specifically are you going to be doing in the next 3, 6 months or a year to take part of this 6-pillar plan and make it reality? Give us some specifics.
We were fortunate to have at least 350 volunteers in the community from civic, government, and business organizations volunteer their time. And to the extent that they own this plan, I believe that they will continue to shelter the performance through and make sure that we implement on the recommendations. Our hope is that the enthusiasm that's been built up around the plan will sustain it.
Are we losing money? Are we losing jobs to other counties surrounding us?
Unfortunately, we are. Palm Beach County has had the reputation of being a higher cost community in competition with others, and people who have choices have chosen not to come here. On the other hand, those factors are within our control, and if we continue to enhance our attractiveness, we can offset any of those negative factors.
That certainly was the case when it came to housing for many, many years.
Right.
I mean, before, you know, the big housing collapse. I mean, it was really, I forget the median home price, say in 2005, 2006, but it was enormous.
The market corrected that problem. We are now very competitive in the housing stock. We have options for housing at every level, but there are also things that drive the cost of living. Insurance costs, the standard, just the cost of food, transportation, all those other factors. But I think the biggest opportunity here are the amenities that we offer.
But go back for a moment to how you weave together these 6 pillars. And as we sit here, if you were in this chair 6 months from today, or a year from today, or 2 years from today, what specifically would you say is how we've moved on, say, education, or marrying that with technology or infrastructure? It's great to have a plan, but concretely, give us an example at those timelines, 6 months, a year and a half, where you would be. Give us at least an example.
It's a perfect example, and this is a business plan, and no business plan is worthwhile unless you have measures and you can judge your progress from time to time. We're basing our plan on a set of metrics that were developed at the state level, and those state statistics apply throughout the entire state. We have some county measures. As a specific example, graduation rates in high school and college are things that we can measure. Commute times on the roads and highways, those are things that we can measure over time, and we can see if our strategies and tactics are working.
That, of course, all begs the question that you need the money for more resources in the classroom, which you don't directly control. You need money for more road building. There's certainly a lot going on in Palm Beach County throughout the Treasure Coast. I think most would agree. But without the money, is this not just a plan and a hope?
No, I think that the answer in Palm Beach County is more collaboration. I think we have historically worked in silos. We have not worked as a team. We have not had strong public-private partnerships, and we have not shared scarce resources as well as we could. There are always opportunities for being more efficient and more wise in the use of the money, and I think that in these hard economic times, we're not going to throw money at the problem. We just need to work at solutions that are smarter.
Let's talk about one of the other pillars, which is government ethics. And Palm Beach County has been ethically challenged, probably putting it nicely, for a number of years, with a number of elected officials thrown into jail for corruption. How does that affect the economy?
That was not a good thing for us to go out into the competing areas and be known as Corruption County, and we've done a lot to fix that problem through corrective actions. The state's attorney, the grand jury, the elected officials themselves have seized the moment. We've created a new ethics commission. We've created a new office of inspector general. We're making strides in enhancing our reputation and correcting that problem.
What will specific recommendations be to the school district, which of course independently can say thanks, but we'll take care of it ourselves? We're the experts here. But what specifically are you going to be gearing up to do on the education front, both at the pre-K level and also when businesses talk to us and say, we don't have enough qualified people coming out of schools for the kind of businesses, including the high tech you want to bring here? Specifically, what recommendations are you putting out to them?
Palm Beach County, like the rest of the country and the nation, is putting a lot of emphasis on science and math education. We've got to continue to enhance the skill sets to be competitive in a global environment. Students in other countries are excelling in those subjects better than we are. They're producing more graduates in engineering and other science fields, particularly in Palm Beach County with the health, life sciences specialties that we have here. We need to fill that pipeline, but we're also recognizing that Palm Beach County is blessed with a lot of cultural amenities. The arts are important, and so we're not going to neglect that. We're emphasizing those two are complementary with one another. We've got to beef up our capacity in both.
The business pillar calls for removing regulations on businesses. We've certainly heard that before.
Right.
How likely is that to happen, and how fast?
Actually, Palm Beach County is distinguishing itself in the entire state. Our reputation is getting out there for being open for business. Our communities have embraced changes. We are moving towards integrating and creating more uniform systems among the 38 municipalities in the county government. We're moving to use technology to create single source for issuing permits, so we're making great strides. Most importantly, there's a conversation between the public and private sectors how to address these in a complementary way.
It's a big plan, so always it's going to be open to some criticism. It was relatively muted, but there was an article in the Palm Beach Post after it came out by staff writer Jeff Ostrowski, and he said in part that many of the suggestions unlikely to stir controversy, though the plan suggests denser development in some areas, even though real estate developers, quote, often gripe about government attempts to encourage urban-style development there. A suggestion to discourage lawsuits is sure to rankle plaintiffs' attorneys. Those burdensome, quote, regulatory barriers will irk environmentalists. Are you concerned that saying you're open for business will create those kind of criticisms on a much larger scale? And how do you avoid that?
Not really. I've picked up the saying from Mark Wilson of the Florida Chamber of Commerce, if you're not over the target, you're probably not catching any flack. As long as we're generating conversations, 220 tactics, all of them are not going to work, all of them are not going to be successful, but we think we have a good composite consensus opinion for the public and private sector. These are some priority items that we need to work on.
And you've actually set a goal of 2015?
Correct, 2015, and to our commitment to make sure that we don't lose momentum, we're going to annually reconvene, re-examine this plan, and measure progress on the plan.
And that'll be information that the public will be able to, to realize, yes, it's working, no, it's not. And I mean, the public will be clued into this?
Absolutely. And I think what's going to set Palm Beach County apart, we're the first large urban county in the entire state to do this plan to that extent, and I think it will give our citizenry more confidence that in fact people have thought about it and we do have a plan, and I hope that they will hold the individuals named in the plan accountable for fulfilling.
But a roadmap to start with.
Right. Thank you.
Michael Jones, thank you very much for being our guest today. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Coming up, what one politician said about his family that's making waves. Time now for our political roundtable with News Channel 5 political analyst and coordinator of the American Studies program at Lynn University, Robert Watson, and Brian Crowley, author of CrowleyPoliticalReport.com. Actually, our first topic is something I know you were blogging, writing about today. Connie Mack, Republican from Fort Myers, getting into the U.S. Senate race.
It was rather startling news. It started late Wednesday night when it was first reported by the Miami Herald. The Twitter world exploded in tweets. And in fact, on Crowley Political Report the next morning, I listed a whole bunch of those tweets to show the rhythm of how the tweets started with, oh golly, is he really into, wow, and then all this excitement and puzzlement, and the Hasner people quickly jumping in there to counter-tweet the idea of Connie Mack getting in the race. It's a huge development. We'll see how it plays out.
Well, to give a sense of how it might change the dynamics, of course, he has the family name, would follow in Dad's footsteps, and if you're George Lemieux, sort of hoping you'd be the, quote, establishment candidate, does this change that dynamic? And then this late in the game, there's only so much money out there, so can he get on the fundraising trail and catch up?
Well, clearly there are some folks who have suggested to Connie Mack that they're not happy with the field as it is now. So, and obviously through his dad, his grandfather, and his great-grandfather, a list of names from Cornelius McGillicuddy I to Cornelius McGillicuddy IV, today, Connie Mack. You have a long history in Florida, and it's going to be real interesting to see whether or not he can use that very well-known name of his to win a statewide race.
Well, I think there's an interesting parallel to the Republican presidential race in that nobody seems to be really happy with the candidates. Lemieux, Hasner, neither one's really, firing people up. And initially, I read a few of the blogs. People were saying, oh, Adam Hasner is going to be hurt by this. I think Lemieux would, because, as you said earlier, Michael, he's the establishment Republican, if you will, and Connie Mack would take that reign right out of him, although if there's any year that the establishment is not a asset, it's this year that you don't want to play yourself the establishment
I'm a
candidate.
big believer in the money game.
I was just going to say, it is about money, so how can he do with that?
So the first test that Connie Mack is going to have to pass in the next 3 months is by the time they report in the January for the fourth quarter of this year, will he have raised enough money to prove that he's a viable candidate? He's got $300,000-some-odd in the congressional campaign account.
We're running short on time. It's a bad economy. There's only so much money. But he could use his father's Christmas card mailing list and raise a lot of money. So this family is well established, still well connected, still highly thought of.
Just briefly, though, it's interesting that Alan West, who has a lot of money in the bank and heard the same alleged dissatisfaction with Republican candidates, said, no thanks, I'll stay with my run for a congressional seat, not the U.S. Senate. So I think the hurdles to climb are going to be interesting here.
Yeah, they will be.
Well, just as an aside, anybody who is familiar with Palm Beach County knows that Connie Mack Field used to be on the parking lot of where the Kravis Center is now. So the Mack family has a long history in Florida.
Big name.
Let's talk about another big name, Senator Marco Rubio, in the news about reports about his parents' timing when they left Cuba for the United States. He had said in his Senate biography that his parents fled after Castro came into power. Now it turns out they left for economic reasons before Castro took over. Is this a big deal, Robert? How big of an issue is this?
Well, this is not the first politician to embellish or stretch the facts. So ordinarily, I don't think it would be a big issue. Brian and I might disagree on this. I think that this issue could get some traction. Here's why. It's not the first time Marco Rubio has embellished. It's not the first time he's been in trouble. There was the whole using the Republican credit card for personal expenses allegation and so forth. But it's not just that he may be embellished. It's that this is his game plan. I would submit no one has ever heard this guy talk without him giving the son of exile story. So it's his meat and potatoes. If it's just something on the periphery, it might not be a big issue, but this is the centerpiece of his entire political career, was this post-Castro 1959. Now we find out the parents left in 56, actually went back after 1959. Although Rubio's pushing back, even the Miami Herald that had not only egg but omelet on its face for not catching this, they're pushing back now by saying that maybe the Washington Post, who broke the story, maybe they're embellishing on Rubio's embellishment. So there is a pushback that's starting now.
He's senator for the next 5.5 years, and so I wonder what the shelf life will be. And some of the media that really came out, and I must say a lot of them going after the Washington Post story, were arguing that the nuance of the Cuban exile experience wasn't understood. And Rubio's quick to say, what I really meant was they didn't have a chance to go back under Castro. Is that enough?
When I wrote about this, I couched it as a fib. a small lie, not a big, bold, out there lie. I think he's kind of fibbed along these times. Sometimes when he's been asked about his family, he's alluded to the idea that they maybe had arrived in America before 1959. Then he kind of tried to say that, well, it was never clear to him when they got here. Well, we all know that's baloney. There is no Cuban, especially in the 50s and the 60s, who arrived in America that doesn't know the exact moment they arrived here.
Sure.
But there's a certain cachet about being an exile, and some people who have defended Rubio on this issue have tried to extend the aura of exile to those that arrived pre-Castro. But everybody knows that when you're talking about a Cuban exile, you're talking about a post-Castro immigrant. And he knows that going in. But do I think it's egregious? Do I think it's going to end his career? Do I think if they decide we're going to become vice president, it's going to affect him?
Will it affect any more chatter about whether he...
I think it has zero impact on Marco Rubio's career.
And does it not also go to the fact that this was not central to his victory in the Senate? Central to his victory was his Tea Party allure, and also his allure to many establishment Republicans. This was not the centerpiece of why he got elected to the United States Senate.
I agree 100% with that, although I do think it's the centerpiece of his political career. The undertones here is he's on everybody's list to be vice president. Everybody would love him. He's sort of the, I heard one person say that he's the Republicans' Obama. Young, good fundraiser, charismatic. But the cardinal rule in vice presidential selection, not necessarily all that you bring to the ticket, just don't bring any baggage to the ticket.
I think
so we'll see how this plays.
In some fairness to Rubio, though, I think you have to note that his parents did live the immigrant story. They left a Cuba that was ruled by another dictator. They came here to work very hard to do all the things that immigrants, no matter what country they come from here, come to this country to do, to improve their lives. They worked hard, and they wound up with a son who's a U.S. senator.
And could not reasonably go back to Cuba after January of 1959.
It does give him a chance to explain the larger and the underlying story of this experience. But the fact that he's pushing back with such enthusiasm shows that he's concerned about it.
All right, another topic. President Obama's plea to college students, what he's asking them to do after this. President Obama had an unusual request for some college students last week. Here's what he told an auditorium full of students at the University of Colorado when he was talking about his college loan plan.
Young people, I need you guys involved. I need you active. I need you communicating to Congress. I need you to get the word out. Like I said, tweet them. Tweet them. They're all tweeting all over the place.
Robert, you're on a college campus every day. What is the mood when it comes to the topic of the president on the campus of Lynn University compared to 4 years ago?
Sure. Well, the problem for Obama is this, is 4 years ago, among folks under the age of 30, he carried 66% of that vote. That's a huge voting bloc. Those folks today, 20 to 24-year-olds, 14.7% unemployment, even higher than the rest of the country. And young folks usually leave us standing at the altar. They don't show up. So how can he rally them? He's got a lot going against him. What he does have going for them is Obama speaks their language. No one uses Twitter, Facebook, technology to reach out to voters like Obama does. That's what the students look at. My students don't watch this show, believe it or not. They don't watch network news. They all tweet. They're all.
You're going to change that, of course.
It's mandatory from now on.
It's homework. That's the credit. So
You'll go over big.
That's right. He speaks their language. Also, he's approaching this with this really hip factory. They just hired the person who ran Russell Simmons' hip-hop summits, who is probably, if you're under 30, this is the coolest person in the country, even cooler than Michael.
Well, that's a big part.
So they're approaching this, I think, in the right way, using the language of young students, starting early, and then they're looking at issues like all my students are in favor of gay rights. They all support Don't Ask, Don't Tell, getting removed. They're all in favor of getting out of Iraq. So these issues are resonating with young folks.
Brian, quickly, your thoughts on this and how he tries to activate and energize that part of his base and others.
Well, it's an interesting gambit on the president's part. I'm not sure it's going to be enough to generate excitement among students. As an aside, I would say that the problem is less, that a lot of this problem is caused by the colleges themselves, who have hiked up tuitions, and largely because they know they can get this money through student loans, and they direct these kids to their student loan officers and don't really care what the outfall is 4 years later when these kids live with these huge, Robert especially. But,
and we'll be back to wrap it up in a moment. And as always, a Crowley closer.
Well, another interesting development in the U.S. Senate race besides Connie Mack. Jim Greer started talking about the $150,000 that was awarded to George Lemieux to act as a minority consultant for the Republican Party. Jim Greer says that's nonsense. That's not why George Lemieux got the money, and in fact he got it essentially just because he was a friend of Charlie Crist. Something to keep an eye on.
All right.
We'll be watching. We'll have more topics next week with Robert Watson, Brian Crowley, Michael Williams, and I. Thank you very much for spending time with us. Have a great Sunday. We'll see you then.